This
Hey, Kathy,
conference will now be recorded.
Have Alec go on mute.
Okay,
Alec, you might want to mute yourself when you're not talking.
Why I'm
Okay,
making so much noise?
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Jeff Cook's not here. Michael may be late. See, I don't know whose turn it is. I'll guess Alec. Alec, you want to sit in for Jeff? You're
Okay, that sounds good.
okay. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? This is minor, but we told Judy to add that these were Zoom meetings. They really aren't. They're GoToMeeting. We're not using Zoom, we're using GoToMeeting. Does that matter?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes as amended to call them GoToMeeting instead of Zoom.
I
I will
second.
second that.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Some of you are still muted.
Aye.
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 Okay. Are there any visitors? No. Communications and bills? Old business?
Tom, I was in the office today and I have one new bill. We have a bill from Halloran and Sage from Mark Brands for $55.
Can you initial it for me and give it to,
Yeah, I'd be happy, as long as you guys all agree it's okay, I'll just initial it and turn it in.
okay. New business. We were supposed to have the public hearing today on this accessory apartment. And unfortunately, the notice didn't get published. But Judy, are you there? What happened to Judy Brown?
Who is caller two? That's muted.
I think she was caller one. And that's gone.
I think
That's Kathy is caller one.
Caller one is gone.
No, well, caller one is muted. That's Kathy Eno. Caller two is just muted. Maybe that's Judy.
No, Kathy's not caller one, I don't think.
Judy Brown, are you there? Oh,
Let me see if I can see if she's there.
Was she there before? Because when I first came on, then I had to log
Yeah.
off and come back.
The one that's labeled CO was.
Yeah, I
was
think
when
it's showing her off.
Judy came in.
Caller number. Yeah, caller 2 has dropped out. I think that was Judy.
Kathy, can you unmute her?
Do we
I mean, she
do
needs
we
to.
know? I can't unmute her, no. I don't think she's on. I think she must have lost the call.
Well, anyway, I think what we could do is have the hearing on August 4th. And then we would have a special meeting right after
Mhm.
that. Is that agreeable with everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would work. I talked,
Kathy, you're,
I talked with the applicant today with Chris Demchuk, and he's okay for either date. Am I muted?
Kathy, you're kind of coming in and out, in and out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And even your picture is kind of halting.
Oh. I don't know. I did, well, hopefully, I did talk to him today and he's fine with either date, the 4th or the 18th, so the 4th will be fine.
okay. The the 18th, we have that meeting with Rivercog, which is, they say is going to take about an hour.
Mhm.
So let's do this hearing on the 4th. Judy is able to hear the recording of this meeting, right?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Is right, Kathy Eno is recording it, I think.
Right.
Okay. Zoning enforcement officers report. Kathy?
Still in the middle of, yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I think I sent everybody the permits for, May and June. Been busy. We're working hard trying to keep up with everything, with working from home, going into the office only a couple times a week. So I think we're going okay. It's still busy this month. I did get a request from Kathy Eno to talk about possibly having Attorney Byrne, who does the Federation of Planning and Zoning People. Do you know how they'll do a course? They'll come to the Killingworth Town Hall and give kind of a legal course to commission members. She felt that maybe it would be worthwhile for Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals and Inland Wetlands to hear one of those courses, that they come in and update everybody on the new, things that are happening in case law that aren't necessarily regulations that we might need to know. So she was interested in looking at that. I don't know whether that would be held by a go-to-meeting or whether or not she wants to wait until we could actually all be together and have this meeting. But she had asked me about it, and I passed on Attorney Byrne's information to her to look at that. But that's pretty much it. We're pretty much caught up and things are moving along, even though we're working strange hours in strange places.
Okay. Report of officers and subcommittees. I sent to you, I'm surprised Jeff is not here, but I sent you his proposal, which basically repeals the 5-year requirement for accessory apartments.
Right.
And I wondered what people thought about that.
Tom, could you just review again very quickly how that originated, what the thinking was behind that?
I'm not completely sure, but I think that one of the reasons was that, so when new houses were built, that they didn't build in the accessory apartment, which would essentially make it a 2-family house. But I'm not sure. And actually what I'd suggest with this, Kathy, could you find out, if other towns have that requirement?
Hmm.
Kathy, do you hear me? You're mute. Okay. You hear me, Kathy?
Jeff just kicked in.
Jeff?
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, Jeff.
We just started talking about the accessory apartment.
Oh, perfect timing. Yeah, for some reason I did not get the agenda today. So I just realized that the
It's
link
on,
wasn't in my calendar.
you have to go to the town calendar and click on our meeting and the agenda comes up.
Ah, good to know.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. A lot of them do. Yeah, I can. A lot of other towns do have that requirement around here, but it's one of those. It's one of those things that right now it's
You're breaking up. I can't hear you, Kathy. Kathy Jefferson, we can't hear you.
Kathy, do you have other programs running? That, my screen suggested to me I close everything but
anyway.
this.
I do know that there's a lot of towns that do that, but I think that that is one of the accessory apartments are one of those things that has come up. Talked with you last. I mentioned about all these things forward now under planning as far as trying to eliminate some of the exclusionary zoning regulations that we have.
Kathy, you just got muted.
I think she just disappeared and
Oops.
Like Dave said, sometimes
Kathy
if
Jefferson,
you're running too many programs, you run afoul of that. And also, sometimes if you just erase the video part of it, you can still continue on the audio and really cut down on usage.
Kathy, could you say that again? We're not hearing you. I think we
You
should.
hear, hear me?
Kathy, I think it'd be.
I can't hear
one
anybody
second.
now.
Yeah, Kathy, I think it would be better if you called in. Just called in on the phone.
Yeah, can you hear me now that I turned the video off?
I can
Yeah.
hear you now.
No, huh?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Kathy, could you repeat?
Yes, you can hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're good. Can you hear
Okay.
us?
Okay, I turned the video. What I was just mentioning is that the accessory apartments are one of the issues that have come up recently with the discussion about exclusionary zoning and that a lot of our regulations are kind of written to keep people out of our towns. And so it was one of those things that has come up as far as the regulations, which there are other towns that do the same thing with the requirement that structures have to be existing. And there just probably needs to be a discussion amongst the commission members on how they feel about that. It certainly can come out of our regulations because it's something that we put in, but it was put in there originally just so that people wouldn't be building all new homes that had apartments in them. But that may be something that we want to look at.
So
Okay.
Kathy, is your concern that if we took that out, that then people would just start doing that?
Well, there aren't that
Well,
many houses being built.
I don't know, you know, it never seems to be as bad, but I do get questions. I would say, you know, almost once a month for somebody who's looking at a house, but they want to be able to put an in-law apartment for older parents. That question comes up all the time in new construction, and we work on, you know, sometimes it works, but sometimes when you're just on a 2-acre lot and you don't have the ability to have them have their separate place, but a lot of new construction people looking at purchasing lots, ask the question if they can have an accessory apartment to have a parent or a child or somebody in there. That does come up a lot in Killingworth.
What do people feel about this?
I think this is Paul. I think Tom started to say there aren't a lot of new houses. Not that, 5 years from now that couldn't change, but it would have to be new construction on 5 or more acres. So that's probably even a smaller number of houses. So I don't know how many people this would affect in town, or houses, maybe 10 houses in the town. But I wouldn't be adverse to bringing it down to a couple of years, but I would want something in there so that they don't build it with the idea of, right away making an in-law apartment. And you can make something over the bonus room with a bathroom in it for your in-laws, as long as you don't add a kitchen. So it doesn't prevent you from having a son or an elderly parent live with you, right? As long as you go through the process and don't put in a whole separate kitchen and bathroom, right?
And
Well,
we do a lot of that, Paul. We have a lot of those because now the ones that are within the house, I do as an administrative zoning permit. If you build it within your house and you don't have a second kitchen, we can do that. But most of the time, the questions that it is answered is that the adult children that have their own children and then want elderly parents, they don't want to have to share a kitchen all the time. The parents want some autonomy. And so that's the question, is that they really want it to build an accessory apartment where it's totally separate.
And let's not forget that it's not always in the primary house. Not to bring up my situation, but
Correct.
it's an accessory use structure. So of course you're going to have to put a kitchen in.
Yeah.
I don't see the benefit of having any waiting period. If the property qualifies, then what's the point of having a waiting period? I don't understand. I don't even understand the concept.
Well, because it's not always a family member. If we say you can have an accessory apartment, we don't limit it to family. And maybe that's something that you want to think about as an interim, that you could do it right away as long as it was a member of the family. But
Yeah, I think
but
that's
accessory apartments are available for anybody who wants to rent an apartment out.
that makes sense. You keep the 5-year if it's going to be rented out, but eliminate it if it's going to be a family member.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so.
do we even want to
That's
have,
something that you can think about.
do we want to have it so you can rent them out? Or my thought was the intent was that it would be for family members or a caretaker. And we have, depending on how many acres you have, depends on whether you can, build something new or just add on to an existing and so forth. Again, I'm curious,
Well,
isn't the intent that it's just family members or a caretaker as opposed to a for rent sign?
well, we don't have that currently, and I'm not sure how we would do that in the future. What happens is most of these that come in start as being a family member or, an adult parent. But once the apartment is there, it never leaves. And so, once the family is no longer using it, then they rent it out, or the house is sold and it becomes, a home with an apartment that you can rent. We don't have anything that says you have to, when it's no longer a family member, it has to be changed back into the regular house. That's kind of the issue. Most of these start as a family member and then end up as rental apartments.
Well,
certainly
and I would agree with that, Kathy, but I would have to say that I also agree with if it starts out with a family member, be it an adult child or an elderly parent or parents, and then they move on and the place becomes vacant. The apartment has been legally constructed to conform to all of our rules and regulations. So now there is a different person living there. But why the restriction?
Yeah, I agree with you.
That could be a
There is no restriction.
source of income for an elderly homeowner. You know, there's a variety of scenarios. I suppose I would support something that said, you know, if it's not an immediate family member, then you know, there has to be a special approval granted by the commission. In other words, you have to come in and explain what your plan is.
How do we avoid two-family house? Say you buy one that's already got the apartment and now you rent that apartment to a family. Are we flirting with possible abuse there as opposed to, you know, a genuine concern that if you have a family member, whatever, this accommodates them? Should we be looking at a way?
I think you have,
I think that can be done now. We don't prohibit
but
it.
yeah, I think that one of the decision kind of thing is because the ones that we have that start off end up being rental units, but then the issue is there's a need for those rental units for if you want to bring younger people and, you know, you want to bring that millennial or those people back into the area. You can't do that really without having those accessory apartments that are available for them to live in for a couple of years until they make the money to purchase a house.
Yet another good point.
And that would be permitted in the case of you build it for your in-laws and then a few years later they pass away or you sell the house to someone else, then they can, you know, there's no reason, nothing stopping them from renting it out because the building's no longer 5 years new.
Right.
So, yeah, so that doesn't stop them.
Right, and that's currently what we have. Most of these apartments start out as being for a family member or a parent, and they end up being rental units after a certain amount of time when the parents are gone, because you've refinished it, you've put in a kitchen, you've done all those things. Now you have a rental apartment. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because there are, you know, there's a lot of millennials that need that place to live for a starter home. Starter homes are kind of non-existent anymore. You really end up in some sort of an apartment before you can afford to buy a house.
Yeah.
Then in theory, would we be amending our regulations such that if you came with an application for a new house and said, I also want to include an apartment that I'm going to rent, in theory, you know, would we have to adopt something like that?
Yeah, but we would specify that it's for a relative.
Right. And for first construction.
I think,
Right.
yeah, I think that's what you'd want to start with. Start it as being a family member relative, and then they come in and they get their permit. And then once after that, we lose track of it anyway. There's no way for us to go back and find out when an elderly parent moves or passes away or whatever. We don't have any control over that. But I think if you did it so that you could start it right away, as long as it was for, you know, you came in and you said it was for a family member, it wouldn't be that
Or
much different than
in-law
what we have
apartment.
now.
Right.
In-law apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. A stated such. Yeah.
Okay.
And
What
then
I'm-
one other thing, there is a difference between two dwellings. I mean, you know, a two-family house, what usually we think of with a two-family house are somewhat equal size living spaces. An apartment, an
We have that.
accessory apartment is a lot different than another house.
We do have two-family house regulation.
Right.
They are, yeah. Joan, you were gonna,
And
Yeah.
we have, we
Why
do
not?
have a size limitation too.
yes.
This is on the apartment, a size limitation on the apartment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a maximum square footage that the apartment can be, and it's much smaller than the house. It would never be a two-family house.
Right.
From the current regulations that we have, it's a much smaller approval.
Right,
Mhm.
1,200 square feet.
Can I talk now? I
Joan.
don't see the logic. If you're gonna say upfront, it has to be for a family member or a caretaker. But when that situation resolves itself and it's no longer being used for the family member or the caretaker, so now you could rent it out to anybody. Why not let them rent it out to anybody to begin with? I don't see the logic. You're gonna let them out to rent it to somebody after a person dies or moves someplace else. Why not let them do it up front?
Yeah.
I don't see the logic.
Yeah, I mean, what are we trying to avoid by putting that caveat or additional restriction in? What's the objective?
Right, I could see if we put the restriction in and kept it in, that would be one thing. But to have the restriction in and then say, okay, you can rent it now to anybody. Well, if I were building a house, why can't I just do it anyhow? What difference does it make if I have a caretaker with a relative? I'm really having a hard time seeing the logic of the restriction.
I don't know. Here's what I suggest. Let me look at the regulation and I'll put in some amendments or thoughts based on our discussion. And then we'll have something to look at. And then we'll come back to this issue. I'll send it out and we'll discuss it at, maybe our next meeting. That sound okay?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom? Can't hear you,
Can't hear
Tom.
you, Tom.
You're muted.
No, he's not muted, but we can't hear him.
Ah,
No,
Tom, we can't hear you.
but I guess he says, no, oh, never mind.
Here we are.
I think we should use Zoom. It works a lot better than this.
I know.
GoToMeeting.
It really
I
does.
agree. Mhm.
Zoom I like Zoom. I'm on a lot of meetings with Zoom and it works great.
Yeah. Kathy, did you hear that? Kathy Eno?
Yep, I did. Yes, does anybody there have a Zoom account? I mean, it's fine for you to use Zoom. I mean, we've had some problems, like the COG we were Zoom bombed the other day with some really repulsive Nazi stuff.
Oh,
This
God.
one's supposed to have better security, but I agree this is a problem. Although next time I'll try doing it from my office. I was going to do that tonight, and that might be a better connection.
Okay. I think Gina she did a Zoom meeting for the Historical Society. And I think Zoom is working on their security.
Yeah, absolutely. The Park and Rec has been meeting with a different Zoom account. So yeah, that would be great.
And if need be, I have one.
There you go.
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
Zoom
Anything else anybody wants to bring up?
Yes, I have two things to bring up, two announcements more than anything else. One of which is from Nighttown Transit. We had a study done for the past couple of years, and there is going to be a merger between Nighttown Transit and the Middletown Transit system. So it's all going to be one huge district. The details are not finalized. I'm on the negotiating committee, OL's representatives from Middletown and Nighttown Transit, to work out a memorandum of understanding with Dennis Zelensky and the Department of Transportation. I mean, the bottom line was it'll be one district. The main facility will be in Middletown, but there will be a shoreline facility. There will be additional staff and blah, blah, blah. But I just wanted to give you all a heads up. It'll be at least 2-3 years before it's fully finalized, but it is in the works. That's number one. Number two, you know, I think all of you might be aware that there's a Charter Revision Commission underway. Well, there is, and I'm on it. And last night we were talking, we started talking about elected boards and commissions. And as a stakeholder, planning and zoning will be invited to attend one of our sessions to go over not only what's in the charter, but different possibilities. And two possibilities that were brought up, and I'll let you know that this is more of homework than anything else. We are going through the charter, literally sentence by sentence by sentence, and questioning things, and then having informational meetings and sessions with experts outside of Killingworth, like looking at the different forms of town government. Well, the two things that came up that would be of interest to planning and zoning, one of which was the number of members on the commissions that have 6 members. Board of Finance is one, we're one, and saying that if there's a tie, that then nothing goes through, that could be an issue. So we're just looking into it. We're all doing research more than anything else. And the other thing that came up was looking at having a separate planning and zoning commission. Now, we're not saying we want to do it, but we're looking at other town charters and other information. And some towns do have separate planning and zoning commissions. As a matter of fact, some towns have them appointed, a planning and zoning commission that's appointed, not elected. But I just want to give us on the planning and zoning commission a heads up that we're looking and doing research on everything. So put your thinking hats on. I know, so before we have the stakeholder meeting, so that you could have at least some input. I don't know if you wanted to discuss it before the stakeholder meeting or whatever, but I just wanted to give you all a heads up.
Okay.
Joan, when is that meeting?
The stakeholder meeting, they haven't been established yet. The stakeholders meeting will be held after we go through the entire charter. Right now, we just finished section 4. So in 2 weeks, we're meeting every 2 weeks. We'll go through section 5. And hopefully the number of them should go by quickly because it's just an explanation of the boards and commissions appointed and elected. And then we're going to have stakeholder meetings. So there'll be a schedule set up. But I think it would be important, selfishly, for the planning and zoning interest, if all of us would be able to attend that session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I will keep you abreast of anything that's going on.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Good night.